Hello, and welcome to the Telltale Cake YouTube recording factory, where we stand up for our marathon days of 12-hour recordings, 6 days a week, for $1.80.
And some of us do it in heels.
It's excellent. It shows progress in America. Our recording factories are the best in the world.
If you don't look too much into injury rates.
Which you never should. OSHA does not apply because it does not exist yet. This is 1904.
In 1904, we have this lovely book. If you were a child in the late 80s and 90s, you might remember The American Girls, which were dolls that also had accompanying stories. And considering when it was published, which I believe was 1986,
yes,
it is remarkably progressive.
Very. It is progressive for now.
Yeah.
Well, we currently have bills that would allow more child labor. So this is Samantha Learns a Lesson. All American Girl series. The second book in the series is always about school. This is Samantha. She is a wealthy orphan in 1904.
Mm-hmm. She lives in New York State with her grandmother, who is very prim, proper, but kind of sympathetic figure.
She also gets visits from her uncle, whom she loves, and her uncle's girlfriend, who is a suffragette, who will unfortunately not figure in this story. But it's still a pretty great story. Now, to eat with this, we will be eating oatmeal cookies. It would be more traditional for us to eat just some oat cakes and some boiled milk, but I'm not quite that committed to the bit.
No, I'm not either.
So we have gluten-free oatmeal cookies. They're somewhat crummy because gluten-free flour I'm not good at baking with yet. So it's
a work in progress. It's a learned skill.
There's also dried cranberries because I hate raisins, and white chocolate chips, which is not a 1904 thing, and it's not really a factory girl thing.
No. If we were doing a different book, I forget which one, we would have Petit Fours. Oh, it was her birthday. That's what it was. I don't know how I remember that, but apparently that's what's decided to lodge itself in my brain, pushing out more important information.
I would not be making Petitfours, though. I would be buying them.
Mm-hmm.
Again, I'm not that committed to the bet. The American Girls were created by the Pleasant Company, which has now been acquired by Mattel, which is pursuing a capitalistic monopoly on stories about dolls who are progressive. And I have confusing feelings about that.
Yeah, it's not great. It's not great. Also, there was apparently a drop in quality once Mattel purchased Pleasant Company in terms of the way that the dolls were manufactured. I've just heard that. I don't know, but that's what I hear. And when we were kids, I don't know if you grew up reading these, but I did.
I did.
Mm-hmm. So there were only like five different girls, and they have expanded the cinematic universe of American Girl since then to include a lot more types of stories.
Which is good. I had paper dolls for Samantha, Molly, and Kirsten. Mm-hmm. Kirsten was always my favorite. Mm-hmm. When I was a very little girl, there was one year that I dressed up as St. Lucia, and my mom made a little St. Lucia cake.
That's adorable. I did like Kirsten a lot. She was probably my favorite. I liked her and I liked Samantha. It was kind of those two that I liked. So Samantha, and I think honestly a lot of that was just that I preferred the clothes for Samantha, if we're going to be real.
Samantha had the best clothes.
She had apparently if you had the doll, she could get this winter muff and all these wonderful things. Anyway, but in terms of the book itself, it's as you can tell, a very short, slim book, but it's for children. It's a quick read. And it tells a story about how she is in school and her budding relationship with Nellie, who she had met in the Meet Samantha introduction to the series. And Nellie had previously lived in, was it Brooklyn, or are we really told? Exactly.
I don't remember. I think it was just a big city.
Yeah, I think it was just meant to be New York, maybe Lower East Side, but it's not specified, in a tenement with her two younger sisters and her parents. And they don't go into graphic detail, but they give you enough detail to understand a little bit of the reality of what that would have been like. And as Samantha will discover, Nellie had also worked in a factory.
So the story opens, Samantha is in school doing school things. She's got her friends. She's got her nemesis. It's your standard school setup. You've read the school story. Every school story is kind of similar.
Right.
And two important things happen. There is a speech contest announced where all the kids are going to have to give speeches about progress in America. And the best two speeches get to go to a big inter-school competition thing. The winner gets a medal.
Yeah.
Samantha really wants the medal. So she goes home, she's thinking about it, and then she encounters Nellie again. Nellie and her family have moved back upstate. Nellie is still going to have to do child labor. She's working as a servant in somebody's house, but she gets to go to school.
Right. So she and her two younger sisters start school. Nellie has a little bit of a hard time because she is about Samantha's age, we're led to believe. And she can kind of read, but not really. She knows letters, but not much further than that. And so she's put back into, I believe, the second grade, where they're very rude and mean to her because she's, of course, older than they are.
Samantha, being a very energetic and actually very nice kid, decides to start her own little school where she helps Nellie.
Right. And you do have this sense at the very beginning, which they switch on you, which is great, of, oh, this is going to be some savior story about how the progressive rich kid helps the poor kid. And that looks like the way it's going to be set up.
We even have this interesting exchange between Samantha and her grandmother where they talk about the class difference. And Samantha says, well, you don't mind me playing with Nellie. And Grandma says, well, you're helping Nellie. You're not playing with her. There's a difference. And Samantha, to her credit, does not like the difference.
Right. Yeah, to her credit, she thinks that that's kind of bullshit. But you also get this scene where her nemesis at school sees her walking with Nellie and her sisters and makes fun of her about it for hanging out with servant girls. And then her mother and some other woman talk with the grandmother about it and get kind of just, Karen-like about the situation, which to her grandmother's credit, she puts down pretty quickly.
So the day of the speech comes, and the first speech, like the each school speech, and Samantha wins for her school along with her nemesis because, of course, there's this rules and structures to these things, and she's very excited about this speech that she gives about factories in America. This is the greatest example of progress she can give, and she's very excited, and Nellie is excited for her friend and wants to hear the speech. So Samantha gives a speech about how wonderful factories are. And Nellie says, well, that's great, except it's not very true. And I'm going to actually read this. Nellie was quiet. She was remembering things she didn't want to remember. I worked in a big room with other kids, she said finally. 20 others, I guess, but that didn't make it fun. We couldn't play. We couldn't even talk. The machines were too noisy. They were so noisy that when I got home at night, my ears were buzzing, and it was a long time before I could hear anything. We had to go to work at 7 in the morning, and we worked until 7 at night, every day but Sunday. Nellie continued, I worked on the machines that wound the thread. There were hundreds of spools. We had to put in new ones when the old ones got full, and we tied the thread if it broke. We had to stand up all the time. I got so tired, Samantha. My back hurt and my legs hurt and my arms got heavy. The machines got fuzz and dust all over everything. It was in the air, and it got in my mouth and made it hard to breathe. Nellie was quiet again. Then she went on. The room was awful hot in summer, but it was worse in winter because there wasn't any heat. Our feet nearly froze. We couldn't wear shoes. Samantha was shocked. You couldn't wear shoes? She asked. We had to climb on the machines to change the spools, and the shoes could make us slip. The machines were so strong they could break your hand or your foot or pull a finger off as easy as anything. We all had to have our hair short. If your hair was long, the machines could catch it and pull it right out. They just kept winding. Once I saw that happen to a girl. She was just standing there, and then suddenly she was screaming and half her head was bleeding. She almost died. Nellie was running her finger along the edge of the cushion again. They paid us $1.80 a week. She looked straight at her friend. That's why thread is so cheap.
It's impressive that all of that is put into a children's book.
Yes.
I'm super impressed because I feel like that is the kind of speech that if you were to say it now in the year of our Lord 2024 on the Senate floor, people would say, oh, that's woke.
This is, again, 1986, and somehow this is still progressive and it's still relevant, and we're still having fights about labor rights.
Right. I mean, as we speak, like I know in Arkansas and Indiana and some other places, there have been legislative state laws made and bills passed about lowering the age at which children can work, increasing the amount of hours that children can work, and otherwise just, really pulling back on all of the labor rights, improvements that happened since the time of Samantha.
I believe there is currently a bill in the Kentucky state legislature that would take away workers' rights to a lunch break. I just saw that recently.
Beautiful.
Isn't it? So, Samantha, to her credit, I want to talk about how great Samantha is here. She receives new information. Mm-hmm. She doesn't tell her friend, oh, you're just overreacting, or
yeah,
you're like, that's not everybody's experience.
She believes Nellie.
Yes. She's not going to say, oh, we need to hear from the other side.
Right.
She goes home and she rewrites her speech.
Yeah.
So the day of the big competition comes, and everyone's expecting her to give a speech about progress in America, about the great factories. Mm-hmm. And again, this is a very short speech, so I'm going to just read it. Americans are very proud of being modern, Samantha began. We are proud of our progress. We are proud of the machines in our factories because they make so many new things for us. But Americans are proud of being truthful, too. If we were truthful, we would say that the factory machines make things fast and cheap, but they are dangerous too. They can hurt the children who work in the factories. The machines can break their arms. They can cut off their fingers. They can make children sick. And children who work in factories don't have time to play or go to school. They are too tired. Samantha spoke calmly and clearly. If our factories can hurt children, then we have not made good progress in America. Samantha continued, and I believe Americans want to be good. I believe we want to be kind. And if we are kind, I believe we will take care of the children. Then we can truly be proud of our factories and our progress. Now, we took, I believe, the same speech class, at least with the same professor in undergrad. So, based on what we learned there, how would we grade this speech?
It's actually pretty good. It doesn't seem like he would always say a speech is not an essay on its hind legs, and which I remember to this day. And
I don't remember his name, but there is a professor at Berry College
who I think is still there, probably,
I think so,
wearing his bow ties.
Yes. So I hope he knows that there are at least two women who will always remember that a speech is not an essay on its hind legs.
Indeed. And, I thought she did pretty well. It didn't seem like something that necessarily would be this long essay. She gives practical examples, which I recall from that speech class is something you should do. She doesn't just give, I think the other speech that someone gives is much more vague, whereas hers has these practical examples of losing a hand or a foot or something. So I think that on that standard, it's pretty good.
I think it could use a little bit more data, like how many children died, but I don't know.
Of course. But she's a child and also doesn't have the internet.
Exactly. So I'm going to say it's a pretty good speech. I also like the way that she's appealing to people in a way that's hard to disagree with. Mm-hmm. We, of course, live in an age of alternative fact, but if someone says to you, oh, I know you're truthful, that's hard to disagree with. Mm-hmm. Just practically, you don't want to turn and go, no, I'm a liar.
Right. There's actually a term for this, which I'm a hack, so I can't remember, but where you're appealing to the other person's sense of morality, which is exactly what she's doing there. And it's a good rhetorical device.
So it's a great speech. And I also want to point out, not only is Samantha believing Nellie and redoing her speech, she is doing probably the most that she can in order to help a bad situation. She is at a big inter-school competition. She's on a stage. She's talking about a real problem. She's doing what she can with what she has where she is. There's plenty of adults in this story who have a lot more, who are doing a lot less.
Right. More, yeah, exactly. Adults who do have more power could make more changes, and, they don't. And I think it's also just an interesting look at kind of the progressive outlook at that time, which is a little bit maybe optimistic, but thinking that, as we progress, things will get better and we can make them better. And she's saying, yes, that's great. That's how we feel. Here's how we do that. So it is historically like a little bit accurate in that regard.
I also feel like there is an accuracy to how optimistic you can feel about your ability to make change when you're younger.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Right. Life has not ground her down yet.
She's not old and bitter.
Right.
And I love that. Then, like we do with all the American girls, we end with a little section on what school and factories were like with some actual photos, which is very fun. I really liked this about these books when I was young.
Yeah, I did too. I loved that part. There's a little, they show the historical accuracy behind a conversation that the girls have, where one of them says, I have a cousin or something who has to take these swim lessons, but you're just suspended in air and you're having to, kick and move with your arms. And then they show a picture of this young woman suspended in air. And it doesn't look fun, I gotta say.
It doesn't look fun. It doesn't look safe.
No, it looks bizarre. And why would you ever do this anyway?
I don't think that would teach you how to swim.
No, and it seems also like a lot of trouble in work. Like engineering had to go into this. There's like a pulley system. I don't know. I don't understand it, but it was apparently a thing that happened.
And that's how we learned to swim if we were rich girls in 1904.
Exactly. Maybe not enviable, but it does have actual, I think, swim costumes in there as well, and it shows some children at a public school. It shows children in a factory. And again, not graphic pictures, but enough that you get an idea.
With that, let's judge this on my unitless sugar scale. This is a children's book, so we're going to skip right on past sexiness.
Yes, doesn't apply.
Uniqueness. This is, even for a children's book, even not for a children's book, I don't read that many books on labor rights.
Yeah, it's not something that's covered nearly enough in American culture or history classes. I certainly didn't learn anything about it. And it's not something that shows up much in children's literature, certainly. So I think it is unique on that basis.
It's very unique. And it's also kind of unique in how good the class relationship is, because you do have this really rich girl hanging out with a servant girl in a very non-white savory way, even though she's helping her. So it's a very healthy relationship.
Right. It's very different from, for example, if you read A Little Princess, where the class structure is maintained, because even once Sarah Crewe is rescued by the neighbor and, Becky goes to live with her, Becky's her servant. It's not, they don't mess with the class structure so much. So this is very refreshing.
Here, even though Samantha is helping Nellie with her reading and her geography and stuff, Nellie is also helping Samantha with her speech and giving her new information that she does not have.
Right. There's also this wonderful bit where Samantha's teaching Nellie, and she starts to do arithmetic and realizes that Nellie really knows her stuff. And it's because she had to do grocery shopping with pennies for her family, so that she already knows how to do arithmetic.
She's very good at it.
She's very good at it, right?
Much better than Samantha, really.
Right, exactly, yeah. That was an interesting bit.
Gender? There's not a lot in this book, but I believe there's another one in the Samantha series that gets into a lot of stuff because, again, her uncle's girlfriend, or whatever the acceptable term in 1904 would be, is a suffragette.
Right. So that does come up in other books, not so much this one.
Axiness. Franz Kafka says that a book should be an axe for the frozen sea inside us. And I think As a child, this would really qualify because this really tells you some horrific things about factories.
Right. Yeah, if you're reading this as a child, which is the intended audience, yeah, it does. It kind of opens up your mind to think about realities that we prefer not to think about.
Which is what a book should do.
Yeah, exactly.
Finally, readability. As we mentioned, these are short. This is like 55 pages. It's fairly large type. There's pictures. There's pictures of people in wonderful 1904 clothes.
Yes.
It's a very easy read.
It's very easy read, and it's hard to write good children's books. That's a difficult skill that most people don't have. And because you really can't just fluff it up. You can't pad it because children won't read that. So this does a really good job of getting across the themes and the characters in a brief period of time.
Caroline, thank you for joining us. Now, I did mention that we'd be getting $1.80 at the end of this week for this whole period of work.
Sure.
Now, you may point out that was 1904 money.
Yes, which is quite different.
Yes, so in today's money, that would be about $67.
Which still seems like not a whole lot for 6 12-hour shifts a week.
It comes out to about 87 cents an hour.
Ooh.
And I will be withholding some of that from your wages due to some trumped up bullshit about how you didn't do a good enough job here.
Sure. Well, and also taxes.
Right.
Although they didn't have income tax back then, so.
They did not. But so you might be getting 30 cents from me for this.
Yay.
Don't spend it all at once.
I'll try. I'll try not to spend it all on one pack of gum.
I admire your restraint. Is there anything you would like to exhort our audience to do?
If you have children, introduce them to the American Girl collection books. I haven't read the newer ones, but the older ones I thought were quite good.
They really hold up. At least I still enjoyed this. Isn't it?
Yeah, it's a nice little children's book, and unlike some children's books in the 80s, you're not gonna feel kind of awkward about recommending it to a child. So it's good. Yeah.
They're not going to be going, we must increase our bust.
Yes, no. And it's not going to be, you're not going to feel uncomfortable about the sort of messaging that it's giving.
It's going to give you a very wholesome lesson about friendship and labor rights.
There we go.
All right, friends, let's go support labor, support striking workers.
Union strong.
Union strong.